Hello, my friends. Here I am back from sunny San Diego, back to rainy England. I love it. I love I love English weather. I do. Anyway, I went to my eldest daughter's wedding, and I, I just I don't know that I'll talk about it. Perhaps it will, what I experienced will come up in several videos as I upload them. But just what I want to share with you was something that took me by surprise, and that was that I wasn't really happy. I was actually sad. There's sort of this sadness thing came over me. Because as a mother, you see your little girl from when she was born, throughout her life. And there is this passage, and it's almost impossible to be joyful. Oh, what a great time I'm having. I sort of went into a reflective mood, just, I don't know whether it was joyful sadness or sad joy or something, but I sort of feeling overcame me of introspection and sadness, really melancholy, and to a point that my daughter actually came. Are you all right? Yes, of course I'm all right. But she was a little bit concerned, so I said, no, look, and I explained, look, it's a feeling that overtakes you because I'm not, your friend or your neighbor happy that you're getting married. There are a lot of feelings and memories and things that, come back to you. And so you get into this reflective. So anyway, I came back with this feeling of sadness, and the jet lag this time was particularly bad. It took me like 2 days to recover. Sometimes I'm okay, but this time was particularly bad. So I'm sort of in a sort of low-key mood. But I thought I really want to upload a video just to say hi and so on. So it's not the right time for me to talk about the election. I think I'm going to take 2 or 3 more days to think about it and what it means. Just to say something, half intelligent. I just don't want to sort of react with some ephemeral and superficial thing. So what I decided was the second part of this last video, I was talking about virility and masculinity, and I left out something that I had already prepared, which was on paternity, the father-son relationship. But as usual, I ran out of time, so I thought, well, I'll leave it out. But since I had it ready, this is what I'm going to talk about today. And it's going to be about father and son. I'm not going to talk about daughters or mothers necessarily, just this relationship between the little boy who needs the father. Yes, we are born, we know what happens. The baby is totally dependent on the mother for 2-3 years, really. But then there comes a point when the mother has to be generous enough to allow the boy now to be taken by the father, for him to initiate him into being a man. And his life is going to change, and the father is going to give him something that the mother cannot give him, not well anyway, because the mother cannot teach masculinity and virility. It's up to you, the father, to take the boy and now encourage him in risk taking, and he'll be okay. Share with you, going places and have fights, and allow him to have a little bit of risk and run and fall down, and he will be okay because you are there, and you know that at the age of 4 or 5 or 6 you're still Superman. Nothing bad can happen to him. So there you are guiding him. So there has to be a very important change here. When the child will naturally seek out the father and plays with him and does things with him, they do things together, and they go places together, and they go on adventures together. And it is a time that is very difficult for the mother sometimes. But if the mother has a healthy sense of motherhood, she will allow this to happen. There are some mothers who are very possessive, and they refuse to give up the child as they see it. But there is this very, very important point at which the father has to replace the mother. Why? Because, as I said, femininity cannot teach masculinity. And there is a certain sadness here for the mother. Some mothers, as I said, are very possessive, and but if that rite of passage does not happen, there will always be a void there in the little boy's heart, a void that will be very difficult to be repaired afterwards. And sometimes they are possessive, not because they want to hurt the child, obviously, but because sometimes the son feels a void, a void she has now because the marriage perhaps is no longer the same. Perhaps she feels rather frustrated at times. She needs to fill that void that perhaps the husband no longer provides. If the mother does not cooperate here, and insists in retaining the child for herself, this will create confusion not only in the child but also in the family, in the marriage and the family life. Alternatively, if the father is not there, if the father is absent, not necessarily just physically absent, but emotionally absent, and does not initiate the boy into, little by little, into manhood, the boy will remain tied to the mother. And this will, there will be something like, it will evolve into something like emotional incest, not healthy, and that will leave a wound there that will be very difficult to heal later on, a wound in the child's affective growth as an adult. You know the Oedipus complex, yes? When both mother and child kill the father. And sometimes both things happen. The mother retains the child and the father is absent also. And this is a very transcendental moment, especially in early adolescence. If the father does not take the child when the child needs to take that step, this will leave a wound that it will be, as I said, very difficult to heal later. This does not mean, of course, that the child abandons the mother. The child will continue to come back to her for comfort. He fell down, whatever. But she is there. She is the heart of the family for comfort when he's sad, when father punishes him. Yes, but father is the one who will have to show him the novelties of the world, the experiences of life, life's possibilities, adventures, sacrifice, strong values, there to answer his questions. A child has to be taken from his mother's arms. A boy needs to be taken from his mother's arms and be given to the father. If he is overly protected, he will grow effeminate. You need to take him. Go to the mountains, go to the sea, trekking. He needs to discover how to resolve difficulties, how to gain skills, how to experience life with father, with dad by his side. And you have to create these moments. You have to initiate your child into life as it's going to be. Today in the West, there is this theory that aggressive behavior in a little boy is bad. That shouldn't be the case. There is this thing that the little boy has to be dominated or domesticated or tamed, so that they become good little boys at school, there sitting in the corner, quiet little boys, similar to girls. No, boys are boys. They are not similar to girls. There are certain statistics that young boys suffer from this attention deficit disorder 4 or 5 times higher than girls. But that is, I think it's their nature. Boys need to exercise, to move, they need physical activity. They need to exercise their tender muscles, jump and run. They need to fall. They need to compete, and they need to fight. But now we see that as, and we call it being hyperactive. But I don't think there is a sickness there. I think that the only sickness is that the great majority of these little boys is that they are males, and in the making of becoming men. And men and males should be educated as males and not as females or young girls. And society now wants to socialize little boys as if they were little girls. And they are not girls. They don't play like girls. They don't behave like girls, and they shouldn't. And this is good, that they don't. They are not to behave like girls. The little boy has an energy, a wish for action. Of course, you need to restrain it in the sort of in the, let's say, virtues that are going to prepare him for life. Yes, we don't want Rousseau's noble savage there. They need to know risk-taking and perseverance and courage and discipline and something being demanded of them and something is expected of him. In other words, you need to put a framework and limits and goals, but let them be boys and play like boys and play hard and let them fall down and compete. And competition is healthy, just aggression is not. There is a difference there. And now we find little boys sitting down at the computer and not engaging in physical activity. It would be a good idea if dads do things with them and promote this physical activity that is going to make them tired, and exercise. And to also, I know this is difficult nowadays, but perhaps encourage them to read lovely adventure books, role models of, I don't know, conquistadors, all these lovely books about heroes. I can't tell you how many great writers I have read that they say that their minds broaden because as little boys they used to read. Gorky was one of them. You remember I told you in another video ages ago how at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the end of the 19th century, that in his autobiography, his childhood, he has his autobiography. Okay, I'll say the whole thing again. He wrote, his name is Gorky, and he's a Russian author, and he wrote many books, but one of them that I love is one of my favorite ones, his autobiography, which he devised in 3 volumes, and he calls them My Childhood, My Apprenticeship, My Universities. He never went to university, it was just his experience of life, okay? But he tells how his father was always drunk. He remembered he was never at home. He abandoned them, him and his mother, but he remembers his mother on the ground being beaten to death by his father. He remembers the boot, his father's boot on her chest. Anyway, that was one of his first experiences, memories of life. And he was brought up by his grandmother, and they used to go out begging in the streets, and they did that for a number of years. And sometimes in the cold, begging in the streets, there was a bookshop, a bookstore there in the main plaza. I don't remember which city he was brought up in. And he would go to this bookstore just for the warmth, just to get warm. And there was, he describes him as a very kind old Jewish gentleman who was the owner of the shop. And he came to, and he was pretending to look at the books. He was just getting warm. And the old man came to him and said, so you can read, can you? He was about 5, and he said, yes. And he said, are you sure? And anyway, he had to say no. And the old man said, well, if you like books, if you come here every day at 12 o'clock, I don't know what time you stay for an hour and I will teach you how to read. And he did. And he said, and I read all the books, all the lovely stories, Anyway, at the end, he got a job when he was 11 years old in an old ship, and he was the helper of the helper of the helper of the cook. His job was to peel potatoes all day long. And he says that at night the sailors will go up to the upper deck, and there they would tell stories and sing and get drunk and so on. At first he loved going with them to hear them talking about all those stories. And at first they would shoo him away, go away. But anyway, eventually they were quite happy with him being there with them. And one day he had the courage to tell them one of the stories that he had read. And they listened. These drunken sailors listened to this little boy telling them stories, and the next day again and again, until one day one of them said, "You know, kid, you're very good with words. One day you're going to be a student at a university." And he said, university? I mean, who went to university in the 19th century, you know, especially a little boy? But anyway, it was something, you know, those things that you say to a child sometimes that stays with them. And so he took it seriously, he took it to heart. And in the next big city, he left the ship and walked all the way to the university and walked in there. And at the grand age of 11, he said, "I'm here to be a student at this university." Well, of course, he never became a student at a university, but he did the next best thing. He got a job in the bakery shop right next door to the university, and his job was to deliver cakes and bread and things to the students there. And he loved being around all these students who were so clever. He said, oh, they were so clever. They would talk about things that I couldn't understand, about revolution and the Tsar and things like. He loved just staying around listening to them. One of those students was Lenin. Anyway, my point to this story is that is how he started, by reading books, and that changed his life. Read to your child adventure books, lovely books about heroes. Let me get a glass of water here. So, sorry, I had my... I think I'm still dehydrated. Can you believe this jet lag is lasting forever? Anyway, so read to your child. Read books of adventure with him. And you want to nurture strong men, future leaders, not docile, lazy lackeys there, okay? But do it with tact, with the love and the tact and the nuance of a good father. Do not wound your child if he is not naturally strong. You know, if he is one who has a hard time confronting the world because he is especially sensitive, whatever it might be, do not pound on him. Do not humiliate him with hurtful words. For example, oh, you're no good, you can't do it, you know, you're a mommy's boy. Don't do that. That will leave a huge wound there. Lack of self-esteem. This is not easy to understand. I know you understand it. You have to be there and you have to accompany him, yes, but with tact and with patience. In other words, you have to earn his heart. You have to earn his heart with virile affection. You know how to do that. We women will go and no. You do it in a different way, but the child knows. The child knows. Help him get over his fears and his doubts, which he is going to have. You had them too when you were a little boy. So advise and hug and be together and have infinite patience, okay? Correction also. But do it with paternal love, with encouragement. Congratulate him in his achievements. And also, don't forget, punish or reward. What we have today in modernism is the breakdown of paternal authority, which had horrid consequences throughout society. I told you in the other video that we are to blame too. We lost our shame, but that's because you lost your sense of honor. We need to recapture these two virtues. And I say that the paternal authority was brought down because you have been reduced to being someone, to be seen only in economic terms. You know, the bookkeeper, the administrator of the family, the administrator of the money, the well-being, perhaps going on holidays. In other words, a caretaker, or a steward, or a warden, or a bodyguard. In other words, the paternal authority has been castrated out of you. You were supposed to be the transmitter of the identity of the boy at a social and psychological level, a paternal sovereignty. And this is complicated, the killing of the father. Nietzsche talked about God is dead. He was referring to many other things, but it was the death of the father. And then Freud too, the death of the father. Always Freud interpreting the relationship between father and child, always in terms of conflicts, unresolved conflicts. Again, to kill the father. This has a long history. It hasn't just happened in the last 30 years. Okay, the diminishing of your paternal authority has been going on, have been working at it for a long time now. And since Freud, the father has been incorrectly seen as the oppressor. And then we have the Frankfurt School, and again the death of the father. And the death of the father means the death of the family. And all authority is seen as repression. What a terrible thing to see authority and discipline as repression. Discipline, the discipline that the father instills in the child is not repression, it's the opposite. It's self-control, it's self-dominance. You are disciplined, you're going to do this and you're not going to. You are in control of yourself and your passions. That is the opposite of repression, when you hide them away and you're not in control, you don't want to even look at them. How can they possibly conflict, these two things, as if they were the same ones? In the centuries ago, in pre-industrial society, the children were very much part of the family, in the production, the production they were involved in. So if they worked in the fields, the child would also have a job, perhaps to take a glass of water to the whatever it was. He had a little job to do. They all had a part in the governance of the family. Then with the industrial revolution, industrial society, we moved to the cities. The extended family kind of disappeared. We lived in small places. And then the tradition of the child working continued, but now in horrendous terms, with children going to work down the mines and so on. Okay, all that has changed, thankfully. But we have fallen into the opposite extreme, because in olden times the children were respected as children. They knew that children could do this and couldn't do that, but the children were almost like mini adults. I told you about my cousins, peasants. at the age of 9, their job was, I told you, to go out to the cows, and they had a job to do. You know, father had something else, or mother had something else. And they were very responsible, even at a very early age. They were like mini adults. But in today's society, they are almost childish adults. You know, they're adults who haven't stopped being children yet, because they have been perhaps overprotected in many cases. I am aware of the problems that we are all suffering now with abuse of children and so on. So, but we also have perhaps protected them so much that when they get to university, they want a safe place. They are afraid of everything. It's like we went from one opposite to the other. Can we find a healthy middle ground? Okay, so we know we're not going to be perfect parents, and we know that it is very easy to wound, and we all carry our own wounds, and your child, if you're not careful, your little boy will carry his. So how do you make it known to him that in whatever you failed as a father, that he will always see that you didn't do everything perfectly, neither did your father, nor will he to his children. It's only human, but there was never any intention to hurt. Just kind of do the best that we can, I suppose, all of us. But the wounds are there. Yes, there is none of us without wounds. So don't worry about being the perfect father. It's just that sometimes we hear, for example, I will never be the same as my father. Things like that, okay? I'll be totally different from my father. Perhaps your father was, I don't know, let's go to extremes. Perhaps your father was weak and absent, perhaps not very able, and so you say, I'm going to be exactly the opposite, and so you become hard and domineering and perhaps even abusive, and in other words, odious. But also, alternatively, if your father was a tyrannical person, you know, demanding and harsh, you will be indifferent perhaps to your children. You want to be totally different from your father, and so you're going to perhaps confuse discipline with other things, and so you might end up becoming sort of overly kind, soft, you know, indecisive perhaps, just someone there sitting in the corner, you know, not to bother anyone. These are two opposites, two caricatures. Can we find something in the middle? So be aware that there has been now for a long time this, sometimes we call it the death culture, the reverence of ugliness that is going on today. We can also talk about a castration culture which has taken place and does not allow you to be a virile man. You're not the only one. We women are suffering from a different thing. I just heard something horrific the other day. It was in a congressional hearing. They were talking in the United States, and they were talking about the abortion issue. they're always talking about the abortion issue in the United States, not to say moral, it's a political issue more than anything, but they had this doctor there who I was really taken aback, because he was he was a doctor who did abortions for about 30 years. And then one of those things that change your life, I think he said that his daughter had a car accident and died, and it's one of those moments when you just revisit your life and what you're doing. And sure enough, the next day he went to do his job and have more abortions, and he couldn't do it. Anyway, he was there testifying before Congress, and he said, I forget his name, but he said, okay, since I only have 5 minutes, I will go straight to the point. And he had some utensils there, and he said, okay, this we use, in order to explain what abortion was, he said, this we use from 0 to a certain week or something. We just, just bring them out, to just suction the fetus out. But he said in most cases, however, you need this, and he showed another instrument. And he said, now, what happens with this is that it was like a hook, and he said when you insert the hook and you try to bring the fetus out, the whole thing doesn't come out, because it's as if the fetus is fighting it off, something like that. So you can only get to parts of it. So what happens in all these cases is that you bring out half a leg, and you have to put it there, and then perhaps the other half of a leg, and it comes out, and then half of the arm, and half of the arm comes out, and then the other, and they put the body parts there until the body is complete. And it is essential that every single organ of the body, he explained, comes out. Nothing can remain inside, because if the woman goes home and not every bit of body has come out, she's going to come back to the hospital 2 days later with a terrible infection. She might even die in some cases, but anyway, there has to be an operation, whatever. So this idea, I had never thought of it. I knew that an abortion sometimes consisted in burning the child, and so they come out sort of half burnt and so on. I never knew that they were taking bits of body like this. It was horrendous. I mean, it was 5 minutes, and everyone was, I think it was, people were hearing that for the first time. I say this only because, you see, we have been told that that is part of our freedom and our liberation, and this is so difficult for so many women. Okay, we have that issue and many others. Luckily, you don't have to deal with that in that way, but they have castrated you psychologically. And the thing is, how do we work together to bring back your authority, and to bring back your honor? And I would ask you also, since I'm talking about, just comes to my mind, that because we are so different, yes, men and women, and you are attracted physically in a different way than we are, you see the attraction first, or the visual, the beauty, the attraction, whatever it is. That is not the most important thing for us. We see other things, we sense other things that we're attracted to, and it's not necessarily that you have to be the most beautiful in the playground. That's it helps, but it is secondary. Whereas you are attractive by the eyes, yeah, by physical attraction and so on. But I need to ask you, when there comes a time when the mother of your children is no longer attractive, as she used to be when you first met her. Okay, and part of being a man in my way of thinking is also that just because you're no longer perhaps attracted to her physically, that you do not, however, repudiate her. Not now. She is the mother of your children, and continue being, with her and her protector, even if she no longer, inspires you with her beauty. Do not repudiate her because of that. Nothing else. I think I'll just leave it like that. Thank you very much for listening, and bye-bye.